a lot of Americans don't know that Saudi Arabia is currently carrying out a literal genocide in Yemen, and they're doing this with weapons that we sold to them. And it's not like we weren't aware of what they were doing in Yemen. We know what they're doing. We knew that they would use the weapons we recently sold to them to kill innocent civilians in Yemen, and yet we sold weapons to them anyway. Now, President Donald Trump recently just approved another billion-dollar weapons deal for Saudi Arabia. That's a lot of weapons to kill innocent Yemeni civilians. But nobody seems to care about this. So thankfully, we had this rare instance where a liberal and a conservative teamed up to put an end to this. So Bernie Sanders and Mike Lee, a very conservative senator from Utah, decided to introduce a resolution to stop the United States from providing ongoing support to Saudi Arabia as they commit this atrocity. But it was put up to a vote, and it was defeated in a 55-44 vote. And can you guess why it failed ultimately? Because a number of Democrats teamed up with Republicans to vote it down. So Akbar Shahid Amin of HuffPost writes, Senators Bernie Sanders, Mike Lee, and Chris Murphy introduced the bill to end the American role in the war 3 weeks ago, and it attracted high-profile co-sponsors like Senators Dick Durbin, Elizabeth Warren, Kirsten Gillibrand, Cory Booker, and Dianne Feinstein. But Senate leaders, notably top Senate Foreign Relations Committee figures Bob Corker and Bob Menendez, said the proposal was too hasty and should return to committee, and the Trump administration invested heavily in convincing lawmakers it would unwisely damage the American partnership with the Saudis. Menendez and 9 other Democrats, Senators Chris Coons, Catherine Cortez Masto, Joe Donnelly, Heidi Heitkamp, Joe Manchin, Bill Nelson, Jack Reed, Doug Jones, and Sheldon Whitehouse ultimately aligned with all but 5 Republicans to kill the bill. The issue came to a head this week as Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, visits Washington. President Donald Trump said on Tuesday he was very good friends with the prince, who has been closely involved in Saudi United Arab Emirates operations and alleged war crimes in Yemen. Earlier Tuesday, Sanders said it would be cowardly and irresponsible for lawmakers to oppose putting this bill up to a vote. I am deeply disappointed that Congress has once again abdicated its constitutional ability to authorize war, he said in a statement after the resolution was tabled. Activists who mobilized around the issue, highlighting the plight of the more than 20 million Yemenis now in need of some aid, say Tuesday's vote has only emboldened them. Some began publicly shaming the Democrats who voted against the Sanders-Lee-Murphy bill. And they should be shamed, because when it comes to Republicans, of course, what they did is loathsome in voting against this as well, but we know what to expect from Republicans. But Democrats, they always champion themselves as the anti-war party, and here they are, teaming up with Republicans to vote this down. Anyone who voted for this, make no mistake about it, they are now complicit in a genocide against the Yemeni people. They have blood on their hands, and it's not like I'm surprised to see people like Joe Manchin, who is it, Heidi Heitkamp, Jack Reed, Catherine Cortez Masto. I'm not surprised that they would team up with Republicans, but you would think that they would at least have the common decency to not support a rogue regime like Saudi Arabia as they relentlessly carry out a genocide in Yemen, but they don't even have the courtesy to do that. They are absolutely despicable, and what's frustrating to me is that knowing that the American people are war-averse, especially after Iraq and Afghanistan, you'd think the mainstream media would be talking about this day in and day out, but all we see when we turn on the TV is Stormy Daniels this, Russia that, and I'm getting so sick of it. There are issues that are occurring that Americans don't even know about. How many people that you know personally have talked about Yemen and the genocide in Yemen that's being carried out by Saudi Arabia? I mean, what's happening there is absolutely disgusting. There's mass famine because of Saudi's blockade. Medical supplies can't get into the country because of Saudi Arabia and what they're doing. And the United States, who claims to care about human rights, is doing nothing. And it's not just that we're doing nothing. We're helping Saudi Arabia. We are assisting them in the death and destruction of this whole country by giving them weapons deals. And Donald Trump, even though he was non-interventionist before he was elected, he doesn't want to do anything to damage the relationship that the United States has with Saudi Arabia. So you're just going to allow them to carry out a genocide? Unbelievable. Now, I'm not suggesting that we should invade Saudi Arabia, but I'm certainly saying that as the most powerful country in the world with the biggest military in the history of humanity, we have some power and influence on foreign events. We do. We can tell Saudi Arabia that if they continue this genocide, no more support, no more aid, no more weapons deals, and guess what? They would be inclined to listen, because Saudi Arabia is nothing without the U.S. helping them out, without the U.S.'s influence. But unfortunately, we live in a country where war is a profitable business, and senators vote against it because they take money from the military-industrial complex. So understand that the only reason why they voted this down is because they're corrupt. So I'm glad that Bernie Sanders and Mike Lee and Chris Coons even decided to, or Chris Murphy, proposed this amendment, because even if it failed, we know where people in the Senate stand. And there's a lot of disgusting people in the Senate that voted this down, 55 to be exact, who should all be kicked out of office because they don't care about human life. And if you don't care about human life, you shouldn't be serving in a government body where you represent other people.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.